Good evening. This is the Guilford Board of Education. It is Monday evening, August 17th. We are holding a special meeting of the board in order to continue to discuss reopening plans for school this fall. Welcome our viewing public. I just want to take a moment before I pass it over to Dr. Freeman. We continue to get some questions via email. I encourage the community to continue to reach out if you have questions. You can email Dr. Freeman, you can email me, you can email any of the board members. But I also do want to remind folks that on the Guilford Public Schools website, on the front page, right under latest news, there is a place where you can click for reopening plans. This includes the plan. It also includes a list of frequently asked questions. I got an email today from someone asking us to create one. It is in fact already there. So again, please feel free to access all that information. I think it can really provide answers to a lot of questions that folks may have. The second thing I just want to do is let the viewing public know that as a board, we have obviously been meeting remotely for some time. This has really allowed us to live stream directly to the public and provide real-time information to folks, as well as easy access to the meeting video online. But we are starting to think about how we might meet in person come the fall. So one of the things I think I've learned from this process is how really valuable it is to be able to kind of get folks real-time information, even if they can't get in their car and come to an in-person meeting. So one of the things we'll be looking at is how to continue this process as well, and really combine the advantages of this Zoom live stream process with the ability to start to meet in person again. We also are going to want to provide any member of the board who's unable to meet in person continued access to the meeting. So so we're looking into how to do that, and we'll certainly let the viewing public know how they can continue to access our meetings and the information we're providing.
Katie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the YouTube stream is not up
right now.
No, I keep checking and I'm getting texts from folks saying it's not streaming yet. So I didn't want to.
Yeah, so Kevin, I see it here. It says that we're live on YouTube, but
I'm on it. I'm on it now. It seems to be working.
Okay, all right.
Great.
All righty.
Maybe people should log off and log back in.
It just came up. Okay, it just came up. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so I will now turn it over to Dr. Freeman for any updates, Paul, that you may have for us, and then we can ask questions or have further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Balistraci. I will run through a number of updates relatively quickly tonight, and then certainly there's time for conversation and for question and answer. First and foremost, at this time, the principals are working at the school level on student schedules and class assignments and cohorts. That is taking place at the building level at this time. Parents have responded to the series of questions that we put out the last week and a half, asking if there were special accommodations that would be needed, either around the cohort the student was placed in, or additionally about whether or not parents planned on keeping children out for distance learning as we reopen school. That information will allow principals to better balance the class lists and the cohort groupings that they make. I have received a number of communications just this afternoon asking why other communities have already released cohort information and why we're still working on ours. The quick answer is because we have selected a labor-intensive way of completing this and asked a lot of our principals. We received 388 responses from families who felt that they would have a special reason for why they would need cohort A or cohort B. We could have simply planted a marker in the middle of the alphabet at each of our schools and cut the roster in half and indicated that this was cohort A and cohort B. We had two concerns about that. One is I think it would have created much work downstream as families contacted us and asked questions about or explained how that cohort didn't work for them. Two, we also felt that it would be a less nuanced response. We do anticipate having class lists and schedules and class assignments and cohort assignments out in the week prior to school opening. We know that that still pushes it 2 weeks out, but we also feel that that allows us to make better and more thoughtful decisions. I also want to remind community members that the requests that we are working very hard to honor are primarily around sibling groupings and around parent work schedules. We're making less of an effort. We're not prioritizing as highly requests around social groupings. Just as we don't normally honor social groupings around classroom assignment, we're not looking to honor social groupings around the cohort assignment. We do, however, understand how a hybrid opening is going to have an impact on families, their ability to work, and we very much want to honor requests to make sure that parent work schedules are accommodated, and of course that siblings are clustered together. So again, I know that we've done this repeatedly, but I want to assure the community that we're working on that information at this time and ask for their patience as we're trying not just to make quick decisions, but thoughtful and good decisions as we work towards this reopening. So that is one of the significant updates that we have, that we're working on that information and we'll have it as soon as possible, and certainly by a week before school opens. Additionally, I want to update the board specifically and the community as well, that we are continuing to meet with staff members, and we're beginning the process of meeting with 6 different bargaining units as we move through this process as well. I hosted today the second of 2 full district-wide faculty meetings. We invited 350 teachers to be part of a conversation today. We had more than 100 who took us up on that invitation. We recorded most of that conversation. I was late in hitting the record button. We missed the first 15 or 20 minutes, but we did record most of that conversation, and that will be posted to the staff section of our website so that staff members have a place to go and get their specific questions answered. Mr. Bowden, through the HR office, has begun individual meetings with any staff members who feel that they have qualifying conditions, medical or otherwise, that will make it difficult or impossible for them to return to work. And we are having those meetings and working through those contacts. And we have reached out and we have had initial conversations and are actually beginning a round of secondary conversations with all of the bargaining units to make sure that we are discussing and midstream bargaining any places where we feel that this opening plan impacts working conditions as laid out in any of our collective bargaining agreements. I want to note, I mentioned that we had 388 requests for specific cohort accommodations from families. I also want to note that we had 344 parents who informed us that 344 individual students were not intending to return to school on September 10th, but to remain in distance learning. That's 11% of our student population. When we first polled, we let you know that there was approximately 10% who felt that they wouldn't be returning, and there was an additional 25% who were unsure about returning. Now that we have rolled out our plan, now that we have shared information around our plan, and now that opening is becoming more real, more concrete, we asked parents to commit and to give us specific names for the students that they felt they'd be holding back. And as I've said, we're tracking around 11% right now of the student population that's planning not to return on September 10th. We view that as really good news. When you think about the way that we're scheduling students and the way that we will be supporting students through the blended learning model, this means that a high school math teacher with 20 students can anticipate having 18 students in class and 2 that would be home as we move to fully opened. A middle school team of 100 students would be looking at approximately 11 students that they'd be supporting through the distance model. I also am confident that as we move through the hybrid phase and as we approach October 19th, that we could very likely see that number come down as well. So we are happy to share that number with you, the board, and with the community. I also want to update you on athletics. We mentioned last week when we met that we were beginning to have local conversations about our plans around the athletic program here in Guilford. In the interim, in the week that has ensued, a couple things have happened. CIAC released a statement that they maintained confidence in opening a full athletic season. And then about 24 hours, they noted that they were in fact reconsidering that position. They have placed all conditioning activities on hiatus for 1 week. We currently do not have students who are meeting with their coaches. We have been placed on hold for any of those activities until August 24th. And the CIAC has told us that they will be looking at some recommendations that have come out of the Department of Public Health, and they will be reconsidering and reposting their recommendations for the athletics season coming up. So once again, we thought we were moving forward, knew where we were going with athletics, and that is on hold at this time. I also wanted to add just briefly that we have now been meeting pretty much every Monday since the first week of June. I believe there was one Monday that we took off in that time frame. I do want to suggest that next Monday, I think that we pass on a meeting. We have the second half of our administrative retreat. We'll be meeting with the administrative team until approximately 5:30 p.m. We thought that in light of that, it would be best that unless there's something pressing on which to update the board and the community, that we would suggest taking a week off next week and meeting the week following. That will still allow us to have another Monday meeting. I believe it's the 31st. That would be the first day that teachers return to the district. So we'll be able to update you on the teacher return. And it is well before students return on September 10th. That's all that we had for tonight, Dr. Balistraci, but I know that there have been questions. We've been responding to a number of questions coming through email out of our offices. I know that a number of board members have received questions as well. So I'm happy to expand further on any of those topics or answer any questions that the board has.
All right. Amy, were you raising your hand? Oh, no, sorry. People who have questions, sorry. Are there people who have questions? Either anything Dr. Freeman just spoke about or questions you've received from constituents or just your own questions? Joe, go ahead.
Hey, Dr. Freeman, thanks for the update. I have a quick question on what you stated with the 11% figure. It's floating around 11% of not returning. Do you guys have a breakdown as to where that falls within age groups? Are we looking at a majority of the middle schools, elementary schools, high schools? Is there a majority on one school over the other?
We do. We have that information. I'm just not ready to respond right now. We've given the actual list of names to all the principals. I didn't pull that out so that I can give you a breakdown, but I'll be happy to get that to you by email tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
I just grabbed the aggregate number. I wanted to be able to share the aggregate number. What's actually more important are the lists of actual names that the principals have in their hands that they're working on. We want to make sure that, again, if there's 3 students in one grade level, that they don't end up assigned to one classroom, that they're distributed evenly so that class sizes are leveled across the schools. But I can have that breakdown for you by tomorrow.
Gotcha. And one more thing with the cohorting and the days assigned depending upon special circumstances or requests by parents with work schedules. If a student A is coming into school on Monday, Tuesday, and 2 weeks into the remote learning, the parents request that student now goes Thursday, Friday, do they have that opportunity to switch due to extenuating circumstances such as work schedules, care, or what have you? Would that opportunity be available?
So it's going to depend on those examples. If it had to do with a parent work schedule, we would very likely do everything we could to accommodate it. If it had to do with the child's best friend was in cohort B and they were in cohort A, we would most likely remind the family that this was a temporary situation. It's scheduled to last about 5 weeks, and we would ask them to hold off. I hope that parents will recognize that scheduling and class assignment is a big assignment in any year. Now adding the cohort complexity to it at the building level is making it a greater challenge for principals. And we've never waited till the second week of August to start tackling this work. This work is usually done by now. So, you know, the quick answer is yes, but unlikely. It would need to be a significant reason. And if it were a significant reason that was impacting family well-being, then yes, we would work to accommodate that.
Thank you.
Dr. Freeman, just a follow-up question, just on that number. No, actually not on the 11%, but have we heard from everybody? I mean, is there any significant number of folks that are still outstanding on that survey that will make this challenging, or do we feel that we've pretty much heard from everyone and can move forward?
So the request was designed to say that if you are keeping your child home, or if you have need for accommodation, please let us know.
Okay.
Anybody who has not responded, we are assuming that both the child is attending and that whichever cohort we assign to would be acceptable. However, I will let you know that inevitably we end up getting later requests, either because the situation changed. We know it's summertime, that sometimes our communications don't get out to the families. And so we will do the best we can, and we know that we will have movement. Additionally, we, you know, to Mr. Galino's point, we expect both of these numbers to be somewhat fluid. We certainly expect that decisions to keep a child home will be fluid. And in fact, we hope that as we go through the hybrid phase and as people develop confidence in the schools as safe, that more students will migrate into the building. On the other hand, we know that if conditions around Connecticut begin to deteriorate, and if we see more cases identified, we expect that we would see more students migrate to the distance platform. And in the same case, I think that there are a lot of workplaces that are in a certain state of chaos, as we are to some degree. And I wouldn't be surprised if people's work situations are fluid and change over these next few months, driving parents to change those requests as well. So we're asking parents to take the decision seriously, to in their minds, think of it as a commitment of some significant time, but we also recognize there will be fluidity here.
Thank you.
Paul, can you update us a little bit on the teachers? Previously we discussed how many teachers were needing to stay home versus come in-person teaching. Can we get an update on that?
So Jason has probably had approximately 40 conversations to date, probably has another 20 that are still on his desk. Some of those conversations go relatively quickly. The qualifying conditions and the situations in which teachers would be capable to stay home are in fact fairly limited. So in many of those conversations, we are helping to calm people and encourage people to feel comfortable coming back to work. There will be some small number of teachers who do have qualifying conditions that may keep them from being able to return. And then the language in the labor law is that we need to identify reasonable accommodations to make it possible, if at all possible, for them to be able to continue to work in one way or another. And those are actually literally individual decisions based on the individual's condition and the assignment, the job responsibilities that they hold. And so we don't expect it to be a significantly large portion of those 60 conversations or 70 conversations, but we do expect there to be some number of individuals who will be impacted.
Thank you.
I know that's vague. That's just the best answer we have at this time.
Go ahead, Moira.
Thank you. Just two kind of questions really quickly. Baldwin and Adams sent out communications last week, and Baldwin was a little more specific with their supply lists and all of that for students who are coming to the hybrid plan. And one line was about cloth masks, and then it said more clarification to be provided, soon. That's not to assume that, the paper surgical mask that you can buy in bulk won't be acceptable, or are we waiting for some direction from, Dr. Nalfo? Are we going to be flexible with what those masks are? So parents can
Yes.
kind of get those and get ready for that and get their kids comfortable with them.
Yeah, we are expecting parents to provide masks for the students on a daily basis. We are suggesting cloth masks because they're washable and reusable. And it seems like if this is going to be a condition that extends for a long time, that's the most effective and cost-effective recommendation that we can make. If a family sends a student to school wearing an appropriate paper mask, that is of course acceptable on our end. The state requirements are that it must be a mask that is cloth or paper that seals around the mouth and nose. So it is worth noting that a bandana would not be an acceptable mask in the classroom. It doesn't seal on the sides or underneath. But many of the paper surgical masks would be acceptable, and many of either the homemade or marketed cloth masks, whether they have elastic ear loops or ties behind the head, many of those would be acceptable. I am aware of the fact that a number of school-related organizations are going to be selling branded masks. We're already beginning to see masks that are popping up with school mascots or PTO logos or GHS on them. And I would anticipate that will continue to happen. Again, we also want to note for the community that while we're asking families to provide a mask each day, there will be masks available for students should they forget, misplace, or soil their mask during the school day. Children will not be barred from instruction for lack of a mask. If it is a continuing problem, then somebody from the school counselor, a teacher, an administrator would reach out to the family and work to resolve that situation.
So Paul, there's been some popularity with these masks that are more like a neck gaiter, you know, like a lot of athletes or kids in this, are those going to be acceptable, or?
At this time, those remain acceptable, although I have heard that there is conversation and that the state may be responding to those. I also know there's different versions. There's the regular thin sort of sunscreen neck gaiter, and then there are other gaiters that actually have a pocket in there for a paper charcoal filter to be inserted. So I want to be cautious in saying that not all neck gaiters may be made unacceptable, but the very thin ones may become unacceptable at some time. At this point, we do not plan on establishing local standards that are more stringent than state recommendations. But again, I'm saying that at this time, as we settle into a routine and based on what we're experiencing in the schools, it may be likely that 2 weeks or 3 weeks after opening, the Guilford schools are establishing local, and again, we've never done this before, so we will learn from the experience. At the school level, at the adult level, we're actually stocking in a variety of different types of masks and shields and asking the teachers to experiment with those and tell us which ones work best and which ones are most comfortable, so that we can, as the year extends, stock the right choices and not just whatever was available this summer that we could get our hands on. So again, we're asking parents to provide a mask. It needs to seal around the mouth and nose. At this point, a gaiter is an acceptable solution. I don't know if that's going to change or not.
Okay.
And we will always have backups for students who need a backup supplied.
And then the other question I had was, I know the state came out later on Friday with music guideline, music instruction guidelines. I'm just curious if there's, I know it's only been the weekend, so will parents be communicated about that? Because I know parents are, looking into instrument rentals and preparing all of that and trying to understand, especially fifth graders going into Baldwin, if this is their first go. And
yes, there were a couple or three meetings around music early last week. We know that new guidance has been issued. I was not involved in any discussions of unpacking that today, but we will be getting more information out around that as well.
Thank you.
I hope you know how hard it is for me in all of these questions to say we're working on it, we're working on it, we're working on it. But I assure you we're working on it.
Ted, go ahead. Oh, Ted, I'm sorry, you're on mute.
You're right. Okay. Dr. Freeman, in the hybrid, let's just say it's Wednesday. What should a parent expect that the interaction with their child would look like during that day?
Very good question. So Wednesday would be a day where all of our students would be in the distance learning phase of the instructional model. I think that as we settle in, that Wednesday is very much going to become the day that would be the most asynchronous, that would be the most self-directed, and that would very likely have the greatest degree of students doing independent project-based work. I say that because what we're really working towards is on both Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday, is working on the opportunity to tie the two groups of students together so that the students who are home have the opportunity to interact with the students who are in the class. On Wednesday, you may see a day that is more like more reminiscent of what we did from May to June. Now, I will hasten to add, there were good experiences in May to June. Much of the feedback that we received was that many parents wanted to have less of the independent application activities and more of that synchronous contact. I can tell you that right off the bat, you'll have more synchronous contact in the 2 days that your child is in school. In the other 2 days, when the other group is in school, we expect that there will be opportunities for synchronous contact through live streaming of classroom activities. On Wednesday, there will still be opportunities for live contact. Teachers may be working with students independently. Teachers may be working with students in small groups, hosting office hours that were very successful during the March through June period. And they may in fact be pulling both groups together for whole group instruction. But I would expect that based on the design, it would be a day where parents might expect that their children would have a greater degree of self-directed time and application time for the work that they were working on both Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday.
A follow-on question would be, if a parent chooses to keep the child home and in the distant learning, I've heard from parents that they're uneasy that by doing that, they'll put their child at some sort of an academic disadvantage, and that the child will fall behind the group that's having some in-person contact. And some parents are afraid that at that point, the child will just give up.
So what I can tell you is that that is certainly a legitimate concern, right? We're talking about approximately 11% of the population that will be selecting an instructional model that is different than what we will be rolling out and what we're saying we're ready as a district to provide to the community based on the health figures. I can tell you that we will do the best we can to avoid that situation. I also have to say, though, it will be a different experience. For better or worse, our school system is still built upon the idea of in-person schooling, and everything that we have been doing in this interim has been a compromise of that design structure in favor of health and safety concerns. For the parents who choose the distance learning model, we have embraced the blended model rather than creating a separate virtual academy, because we feel it keeps the children most closely tied to their peers and to a regular classroom scope and sequence of instruction. We feel that the opportunities for live streaming out of the classroom give them the most interactive experience and, again, ties them to the curriculum work moving forward. It will be different than what other students are receiving. We will have to rely on parents to collaborate with us and keep us informed about how the experience is going. We will have to monitor closely along the way, and we will do everything we can to avoid those students feeling out of the loop or dropping behind. But again, I just have to say, it will be different, and we will do everything to make sure that it is equitable and that it is equivalent to what's happening in the school setting. But we've never been asked to provide this on this scale before. I think I mentioned to you last week that we've been providing this type of distance instruction in this district for 9 or 10 years, but we've been doing it 1 or 2 students at a time. We've never provided this kind of instruction to over 300 students. That scale is new to us. The expectation is different, and we'll do everything we can to meet every child's need, recognizing that those parents are selecting a different opportunity for their students. In the past, this would very often, unless there was a significant medical issue in the past, this would have been, we would have said, we're here between 7:30 and 2:30. If you want to be part of this activity, you need to join us. We're not doing that this year. We're saying that we'll do everything we can to meet your needs in that distance and blended model. Dr. Crystal, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that answer. Dr. Crystal, was there anything you wanted to add to that, or?
I didn't hear you call my name.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. We're working very hard to make them, make the students who are home feel as much a part of the class as they possibly can. And we're looking at it as a means of differentiation. So we're looking at it that how are we going to address the needs of the kids that are in front of us, and how are we going to address the needs of the kids that are at home while they are immersed in the same curriculum and doing the same curricular objectives and doing much of the same activities. So we're looking to provide equity to the extent possible with the kids who are at home and the kids who are in school. And we're working on all of these techniques, and we're looking at software, and we're doing all kinds of things to allow students to collaborate and allow them to participate as fully as a student who would be right in front of a teacher.
And again, I think the foundation of that is the fact that they're going to be assigned to a real class of students, and they're going to have the opportunity to participate in real time with that real class of students. I think the greatest danger would have come in separating the two and creating a different scope, a different sequence, a different pacing guide. And I think there was much greater danger in going in that direction.
Well, let me ask a question. Do you know of another district in the state that has gone with this kind of, as you put it, academy approach to the distance learning portion?
No, I'm aware of a couple districts that are attempting to contract out the distance learning portion. Essentially, there are some vendors that in the past have supported parents who have selected homeschooling. And I believe there are some districts that are saying, if you select the distance learning, we will pay to enroll you in this distance school, and you will attend that until you're ready to return to us. I have not individually polled individual districts, but none of the districts that we've been collaborating with are standing up a virtual academy. Most are doing something similar, if not alike to what we're providing.
Thank you.
And in fact, I think I'm seeing more districts that are sort of moving. Some of the plans that initially came out looking different from this are beginning to move closer to this model. I will note that New Haven is going completely distance. Their announcement was that they're not returning to school, they're doing fully distanced.
And one of the things that CABE is collecting is information literally on the approaches of school districts from across the state. A quick look at what they collected thus far seems to suggest that maybe 2/3 of the districts across the state are doing a hybrid. Anecdotally, a number of them in the design that Guilford is doing, not surprisingly, as Dr. Freeman has referenced, because there is also some collaboration with superintendents and really trying to work together to come up with a model that is the best instructionally in a hybrid setting. But I will certainly, as I get information from CABE, pass that around. John, it looks like you have, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Freeman, did you want to add?
Yeah,
that?
the only, excuse me, the only other thing I'd note is that that some of the districts that are reporting a hybrid are doing a hybrid at possibly at the high school or high school and middle level only, and that in fact at the elementary levels there are many districts where, not many, but there are some districts where the students at the elementary are returning for a full 5 days, but they're doing a hybrid model at some of the older grades.
Okay. John, did you have? Questions?
Yeah, a couple of good questions coming in live on the YouTube stream. A good one. What does orientation look like, both for kindergartners for the bus, as well as for students attending new schools?
To some degree, I will have to defer to the principals because orientation is always something that is designed at that school level. At a district level, what we have said is that those first 2 days of school need to really be focused on the return to the school building. They should be focused on relationship. They should be focused on emotion and wellness, getting to know each other, talking about the things in the school setting that are different. So talking about why we're wearing masks. Students are going to be returning to a school and meeting a teacher who's wearing a mask. We need to have conversations about why that's happening so that we demystify that. We need to talk about the new protocols that will be in place. And so I'm sure that their students are going to have to talk about new classroom expectations, what the rules are in the classroom, what a mask break looks like, which hallways in the building have turned to one way, which stairwells have become one way. And to the state's enormous credit, even the state of Connecticut in their guidance pointed out that the first days of school should not be about diagnostic assessment and trying to figure out what students may have missed last year. And they should not be about diving into rigorous and challenging content. Now, they don't have to be devoid of content. We want our science teachers sharing their love of science with the students, but they need to be focusing on the patterns and the routines of the school year. And they need to be focused on the relationships that we will be building between and among the students who will be in class together, and doing activities that reignite the spark for learning. So the state describes it as the early tasks in the year need to be tasks that have a high likelihood of success for all. We're making it very clear to the teachers that we don't want to give some kind of really challenging activity and assessment in the first few days that creates a bell curve distribution. We want to give the students something that is joyful, that they all have an opportunity to do incredibly well on, and reconnect them to that in-person learning that they stepped away from back in March. So it's going to be about learning the new routines. It's going to be about getting to know each other, and it's going to be about reconnecting to that joy of learning. Specifically for them, especially around those transitional grades, again, I have to defer to the principals. Traditionally, kindergartners would come in with their parents for a portion of the day before the first day of class. We simply haven't had that conversation with the elementary principals yet. I think they may have had it among themselves, but I just don't feel confident answering that question without touching base with those principals at least one more time.
Very good. And then the other one I think is just clarification, because you've mentioned it already. Middle school sports are being tabled at this time, correct?
That's our plan. So we haven't finalized that yet, but last week what we mentioned was our plan was that we would be eliminating middle school sports. We do feel that it is contradictory to the cohorting model that we'll be working to maintain at Adams. We were looking to really kind of limit and restrict the freshman opportunities. We were going to probably be modifying JV so that it may be more of a practice team than a competitive team. And we were really focused on trying to maintain that varsity opportunity. With CIAC on hold, again, that was our plan as of last week. We just want to make clear that we're on hold and haven't finalized any decisions until we see what comes out of CIAC. But I would say that's still the way that we're leaning very heavily.
Okay.
Also worth noting, I've had a number of requests come in from parents. Want to make really clear here, and believe me, I know that this is difficult, and I know that this is just shifting responsibility, but to remind the community that athletics are voluntary. And so I fully expect that even if as a school system, we continue to go through with athletics in some modified portion, just as there are some parents and students who are uncomfortable returning to the classroom, that there will be some athletes who are uncomfortable returning to the playing field. And I know the weight of that decision, and I understand how difficult that is, but do want to make clear that even if as a system we choose to offer that opportunity, that does not mean that everybody who has been a participating athlete in years past must come back to that team. It is certainly something that we offer that is voluntary, and parents and students are going to need to think carefully about whether or not they're comfortable, again, just as they're doing around classroom offerings that we're providing.
Kristen, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Freeman, can you give us a little direction about how we can start kind of forecasting for our children what mask breaks are going to look like, what recess is going to look like, what moving around in the classroom itself is going to look like, just so we can start getting the kids prepared for kind of staying in a classroom. You know, obviously the younger kids love recess. I feel like we should, as parents, start informing these younger kids, particularly about what expectations they should have as they go into school. Any idea yet what that kind of sort of mobility is going to look like?
Yes, at very high level. So one, we expect that recesses are probably going to be more classroom and cohort based rather than grade level. Part of the exciting part about recess in the past was that all 3 third grade sections would go out at the same time, and it was an opportunity to see friends who might be in the same grade as you, but not in the same class as you. Likely recesses will now be taking place in more spaces around the building, and we might have one classroom in the back, one classroom on the side, one classroom on the other side, so that we maintain those cohorts during recess. Students are going to have to be reminded to stay with their cohort and not to separate and go join the other cohorts. We expect that when the weather allows, that recess outside will allow students to take their masks off, but we would then be asking students to respect social distancing. We know how hard that will be. We know that recess is not, right? Recess is often a time where students are playing tag, or they're, right? We're going to be working with lots of reminders to encourage students to run and to jump and to scream and to play, but to keep distance at that time, and a greater distance, the distance that we can't afford in the classroom, which would then allow for them to be able to take their masks off during that break. We do hope that we are able to afford other such opportunities, but that happen embedded in the classroom, so that we will be encouraging teachers to find time to get their classes outside, if for a walk, if for a mask break, or ideally if you have a piece of the instructional component that allows itself to be conducted outside. That will be challenged by trying to keep other students connected through live streaming. Live streaming is going to be more controlled and more successful from the classroom, probably a much more challenging activity to bring outside. So that may be an activity where the students at home are part of a conversation about monarch butterflies for 10 or 15 minutes from the classroom, but then when the students go outside to do something else, that the students at home are now doing something more independently because they can't join the students for a walk outside to the local butterfly bushes to see what's happening with the monarch development. We are working to provide a tented area or a covered area at every building so that we can extend those opportunities into inclement weather. I've had some parents ask me how many tents we're providing at every building, because they'd like to see 6 or 7 outdoor classrooms. And while I understand that and would love to be able to provide that opportunity, and in fact visited a school in Costa Rica where every classroom essentially was an outdoor classroom, we're not going to be able to provide that. We're hopeful that we'll have one tented area at every location so that at least one space can be covered from the elements and still afford those outdoor opportunities. And again, that's going to develop. I just feel confident in saying that recess in February is not going to look like it does in the first week of September. I think teachers and principals are going to figure some things out. They're going to find other opportunities to afford those kinds of breaks, and it's going to look different based on what the students teach us about those opportunities. But having that conversation with your students about it's going to be a smaller group, it's probably going to be the same students that you're seeing in reading and in math, and it's really important that you understand that are really helpful conversations to start having with our students. And it won't stay that way forever, but it might be that way for this year, and there's important reasons for that.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from Board of Ed members? Go ahead, Ted.
Do you have any update on what kind of success the bus company has had in getting a full cohort of drivers and monitors? I've had a couple of people who say, gee, that bus is parked in front of Adams for a long time. These guys must be really desperate.
There is a shortage of drivers across the state. I think we are doing well bringing our drivers back. I don't know where we stand with the new effort to secure monitors. Jason, I don't know if you have any more fresh information than what I have.
Scheduled soon to have a follow-up meeting with the bus company and Chip, so we should have that information fairly soon. I haven't had any concerns from the bus company in recent weeks about drivers conveyed to me.
Yeah, we're confident that we'll be okay with drivers. I'm less sure about where we will be with monitors. A related topic is that we will be meeting again with Chief Hyatt and the Guilford Police Department to talk about concerns we have around parent drop-off and traffic. I saw a national story this week about lower numbers of students on buses and increased congestion in towns all across the country. I can't say enough to the parents that while we are encouraging you to drive your students to school, and while we appreciate every single one of you who can drive your child to school, we need to remind you that it will not be as efficient or as pleasant an experience as it was last year. You need to schedule in time to wait in the queue. There will be traffic at the drop-off and pickup queues. And again, it's a compromise we're making to help keep our children safe. It will reduce congestion. It will benefit all students, not just yours who you drive. And so we very much appreciate it. But we're going to need to ask for your patience, especially in the first weeks of September as we start to work it out. And then again, right around October 19th, where for the first time we will start fully loading the buses in the drop-off lanes. Those first few weeks of school, if it feels like it's running smoothly, remember that's only half the population on any given day. On October 19th, when we roll into the full population, we will see congestion double in those locations. And so again, just want to ask for everybody's patience. And if you happen to be a non-parent who's watching this, who drives by Adams to get on the highway around 8 o'clock in the morning, you're going to want to think about a different route to get to that on-ramp, because we will be creating some congestion. I wish we could solve the problem, but there will be some congestion at each of those drop-off and pickup times.
And Dr. Freeman, I'm guessing that administrators at each building will provide either reminders or any alternative bus drop locations so that we don't have students being dropped off in an unsafe manner, either across the street
Yes.
or in some other way. Okay.
Yes.
One can imagine an anxious parent perhaps dropping someone off in a place that they think is safe, but because we know the traffic patterns around various
Yes.
schools, no, is not safe. Okay.
That's a very important reminder. And in a number of the locations, the drop-off location this year may be different than in the past. At the high school, for instance, the parent drop-off loop and the bus drop-off loop both they entered by different driveways, but they come together and they both feed to the main entrance at the north end of the building. The high school will be separating the parent drop-off, and parents will now be dropping off at either the west or the south entrance. And that it's going to do a couple things. One is that we won't have all the students coming in the same front door. We'll be separating the students and therefore distributing the density at entry time, but also by pushing to an entry that's deeper on the property, we'll be loading more of the congestion onto our property rather than out onto New England Road. Mm-hmm. So the cars that would queue up to drop off at the front door would pretty quickly back up to New England Road. If those cars are queuing up to drop at the south door, the back door of the high school, we'll get more of those cars off the street and onto our property and allow traffic to flow more easily. We may not have that success story at Adams. Adams is simply on a busier road. The building is built much closer to the street itself, to the road itself, than at the high school. There may not be a lot that we can do to help alleviate that. But again, we'll be meeting with Guilford Police Department, getting their advice, asking for their support, and trying to do the best we can around any of those locations, all of those locations.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Amy.
I was thinking maybe the the police department might consider deploying some of those digital signs before school starts, like they did for graduation, sort of reminding people what's about to happen.
That's a great idea. We'll bring
traffic.
that up, especially in front of Adams. I think that's a great idea. Prepare for delays. Yep, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking leaving for work myself, I already plan, you know, it's going to be a real problem for people trying to get on the highway between 7:30 and 8 a.m.
Yeah, prepare
Down
for
that
school
way.
prepare for school delays right there is going to be important because of the proximity to the on-ramps. That's a
Hey,
great idea.
Dr. Freedom, I was just thinking about Adams in particular in the back where the tennis courts are. Has there been any thought put into possibly having a secondary parent drop off in the back of the school there? They can walk across the field to get to the back door by the basketball court entrance there? Or is that
Yes.
like complete?
No, we
Oh.
looked at that extensively a couple of years ago, and I can't remember all of the engineering problems, but there was a list of them. We did look at trying to create a second loop and a turnaround and create a sidewalk across that field space. And I'd have to go back to the notes of the meeting with Cliff, but we ran into a whole collection of engineering problems with doing that. I thought that was a great idea about a year and a half ago, Joe. I still think there might be something to it, but we're going to have to revisit what those restrictions and limitations were.
Okay.
Paul, to that end with the Adams and the high school, I know myself having, you know, kids at three different schools this year, you know, we've talked about dropping them off in proximity to the school. You know, if it's at, you know, the reason I bring that up is, I know we were having a crossing guard, or we were looking for one for Adams last year. Is there any thought to having a little more coverage in terms that maybe not just at directly across Adams, but maybe up near CVS? I mean, I don't know. And this is something we can talk to with the police department, but just in speaking to friends and colleagues, a lot of them are talking about, you know, getting to CVS parking lot, letting their kids walk down the street, or going to the tennis courts, just to try to alleviate some, and even with the high school, you know, getting them a couple blocks away from the high school at least, so then they can safely get on a sidewalk. And
that was part of the, it's on the agenda for the conversation
Yeah.
with the PD. We have two of those positions now. We've got one crossing guard who is on the street in front of Adams, and we've got another one who actually works in the parking lot at the high school where the two groups diverge and cross. But yes, we were wondering now, particularly the Adams one took us a long time to even fill that position, but we plan on having this conversation when we meet with PD, yes. And looking at more creative locations. I do worry about some of those strategies, to Dr. Balistracci's point. So we know that it will happen. We know that where we have sidewalks, it may be more tenable than in some other locations. But yes, those are all the things that we're going to try to go through with Chief Hyatt and his officers.
thanks.
All right. Any remaining questions at this point for Dr. Freeman? Okay. Well then, I'm again going to remind the public that on the Guilford Public Schools website, right on the opening page, there is a link to get the reopening plan, frequently asked questions document, other information about reopening. I also, again, remind the public that they can reach out to me, to Dr. Freeman, to any board member with questions. We will continue to try to answer questions as best we can. It sounds like we will not be having a meeting next Monday night, as long as board members agree that taking a week off sounds like a reasonable choice at this point. I'm seeing some nods. And so the Board of Education will hold a special meeting on Monday, August 31st. And it will be very much like this. We will continue to get updates. Those updates obviously are coming from Dr. Freeman and the Guilford Public Schools Administration, but we are also continuing to get updates from the state. As Mrs. Rader alluded to, the state put out a document about music programs and regulations around that on Friday. I know I am waiting to see Governor Lamont's, this is less perhaps interesting to the viewing public. I'm waiting to see Governor Lamont's announcement around coronavirus, distribution of coronavirus relief funds. We're waiting for that announcement from his office today. Again, we will continue to be discussing these issues and supporting the Guilford Public Schools Administration as they are working out the various details so that your children have the best school start and the best school year that we can put together in very challenging times. Dr. Freeman, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would like to add that on Wednesday evening, I'll be joining
Oh, great.
Representative Sean Scanlon for a town hall. I believe it's a Facebook Live activity. So I'm sure if you go to Representative Scanlon's website, you can find information about how to join that conversation. And again, another opportunity for parents to ask questions, both of Representative Scanlon and myself in that meeting. And if it's not on our website, we'll make an effort to get that information on our website as well.
All right. So I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Dr. Best, thank you. Second, Mr. Vidal Ventura, all in favor? Aye. All right. Good evening, everyone. I hope you all have a good week. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.